Welcome back to another episode in our FEMTalks series. Today we're joined by Kayleigh Gray, and before we get started, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Pooja, and I'm a current outreach director at Boosters, so I guess we can just get right into it. So Kayleigh, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
So to begin, I'd like to take it back to my first year. So I began at Western in a dual degree program. So it was both with business and science. So when I entered university, I entered doing the science program. I was really unsure if that was the right fit for me, but I had been interested in science in high school, and I thought, this is something I could see myself doing as a career. I knew that I definitely wasn't interested in being a doctor, but I thought maybe research was like a good potential for me, which is why I decided to go into biology. A few years in, I decided research was not the route for me. I didn't find it interesting, but I knew that there was a lot of scientific topics that I found interesting, particularly climate change was something that I found really fascinating. So fast forward to third year, when I started in the Ivey program, I was thinking, what interests can I kind of see myself in? As I mentioned, climate change was one of them, but I was also kind of interested in health. So that's why I wanted to do Ivey, to kind of see the business side of things. My third year summer, between third and fourth year, I actually interned at Hudson's Bay. And this was because throughout university, fashion had been another interest of mine. And I always thought, I'm never going to know what it's like unless I try it out, which is why I decided to do a buying internship at Hudson's Bay. And after that internship, I realized fashion wasn't for me, but I did like the marketing aspect of that job, and I really enjoyed that. So moving forward in Ivey, that was something I was really looking for in a role. Fast forward to when I graduated last June, and I ended up working and starting with Marlow. So Marlow is a company that was actually founded out of Ivey. All the founders went to Ivey. It's female founded, which we can touch on a bit later. But I started with Marlow. I actually volunteered with them throughout my fifth year of university. And then in the summer, I worked with them. And I worked in a marketing aspect with them. And then just until a few months ago in October, I actually started a new role as a marketing coordinator for Nudestix. So there I kind of help on the e-com team, and I also help with digital marketing. So things like emails or texts and things such as that. So kind of that's my journey throughout university, and like the different roles that I kind of touched on and how my interests kind of developed.
It's so nice to see that you've explored many of your different interests and then found something that you wanted to stick with. So I guess on the note of Marlow, could you tell us a little bit more about what that is and your experience, or how you navigated working with a topic that is often heavily stigmatized?
For sure. So just to begin, Marlow is a female-founded direct-to-consumer brand that sells modern menstrual products. So currently our first product, which we're very excited about, was our first ever lubricated tampon. And it's designed, the lube and the tampon is designed to be used together for a more smoother insertion process. However, Marlow is much more than that. We actually began as just a platform that aims to talk about sexual and menstrual health. And something that we really pride ourselves on is our platform is very inclusive, and it's just like a one-stop shop for education and products is something that we're kind of working towards. And then to touch on how it's kind of stigmatized, it's very interesting because the founders actually began Marlow just through a conversation, and they all were realizing that, we all have our periods, we all get this, but we never really talk about it. And there's so many issues surrounding that. And there's so many things that, we should talk about, because education is so important for topics like this that are, we know they're heavily stigmatized, but education is so key to kind of bring that conversation into the mainstream, because some of these topics are really important for any menstruator to understand. So it's been definitely interesting navigating that. We do post a lot on social media. So our Instagram, Marlow, is one of our main sources where we talk about these different topics. So it's really, we try to get into the stigmatized topics and discuss them. Of course, we have backlash, which is one of the things I wanted to comment on, talking on a very heavily stigmatized topic. We have people commenting that's gross, we don't want to see that, or we have very negative comments sometimes from our TikToks or things like that. But I think it's just really important to recognize people love the content, and people consume the content because they're interested, and this is really important information to know. So I think we just have to take kind of those hate comments with a grain of salt, because some people might be commenting that because they're not educated and they don't necessarily understand why the topics are so important. So I think just the takeaway from working with this like stigmatized topic is that, and especially how Marlow approaches it, is we don't like approach anything in a hateful way. We always try to give people the benefit of the doubt and say, like, if they had to learn this information and maybe they're just new to the topic. So I think that's kind of how we approach this topic, because it's so stigmatized. Especially if you look on our Instagram, we go through like many different things, from like the myth of like period syncing, or things like, are tampons safe to sleep in, things like that. So it's just really important to break down these topics, because a lot of people don't know the information.
Definitely. I think it's really nice that like you're opening the floor for conversation, because especially when you're younger, you don't really know like what's going on. So it's nice to see that people are getting more comfortable with speaking about it, and hopefully that will continue out into the future. I guess this is switching it up a little bit, but as somebody who just graduated and transitioned into the workplace, what advice would you give to recent graduates?
I think one of my biggest pieces of advice is to just take it easy. And I know people probably hear this all the time, and I probably was told this when I had just graduated or graduating, but I didn't listen. So taking it easy is so key. I know it feels like the weight of the world is on people graduating, like maybe they don't have a job lined up, or they don't really know what they want to do. But I think something that is really important is to just try different things out. Like, who knows, like you can have maybe some random internship that you accepted that you actually really enjoy, or just to like volunteer and get experience in different places, because you really don't know what you want. Because I know a lot of the times when people are graduating, they get the advice like, find your passion. But the reality is, if you haven't tried anything, like you don't know what your passion is. And just graduating and thinking, oh, my first job is going to be something I'm passionate about, is a bit like naive. And I think it's hard, because that's kind of what we're fed as graduates, that as soon as you graduate, your first job is just going to be amazing and things like that. So I think just really taking it easy and taking things one step at a time, and don't stress, because I know it can be stressful. I was stressed when I didn't have like a job lined up, but like everything that you can do to get a little bit of experience is so key. And even like another big piece of advice that I have is talking to others. So maybe you don't know what you want to do, but like that's okay. Like reach out to other graduates, especially people from Western. I feel like Western grads are really willing to like talk to people who are still in like whatever program they were in. So someone reached out to me that was in Ivey or biology, like I'd be more than happy to speak to them and just see kind of like what they do for the career. Like, do they enjoy it? Maybe talk to them and see if you have similar interests, maybe you'll enjoy that career path too. I know people really talk about networking a lot, and they really like push networking, but it's so key. It's so important. So like, if you don't have a LinkedIn, set up a LinkedIn, like get your profile started, reach out to people, like try to make a few connections. I think that's like all you can do really, is just kind of reach out to people, do your own research, figure out what you want to do, and don't stress out. It's my biggest piece of advice.
I hope people take that advice, because I think it's really important, especially like I'm only in second year, but it's often like really go, go, go in this like environment. So I hope people relax a little bit when they graduate too. So I know you touched upon your dual degree with science and business. So I guess, what was your biggest takeaway pursuing this? And like, what would you recommend to people who are like in between two careers?
I think especially like the last answer really follows through with this. Like I mentioned, I was really interested in science. I didn't really know exactly what. I loved biology in high school, but I didn't really know what I wanted to go into. So that's kind of why I approached this dual degree, because honestly, like a business degree is really great to have, because it kind of teaches you about like the outside world, how jobs work, kind of how things like that work. So it's really key to have something like a science degree and a business degree at the same time, because you could be like, let's say I could work for a pharmaceutical company in a business aspect, or like I could work for a healthcare startup as like, I don't know, in marketing, or like a business development role or something like that. So I think if people kind of have these two interests, they shouldn't feel like they need to pick one, because honestly, there's so many roles that bridge multiple interests. Like if they're interested in art or science or anything like that, like there's so many roles that you can find out there that really bridge your interests. And let's say people, I don't know, they want to pick one degree to go into, or they really want to pick something to focus on, then I think, again, just like testing out the different things. Like there's no harm in doing one internship for a summer, or maybe doing an internship during the year part-time and just seeing how it goes. Because I think that's the biggest thing. It's just seeing what you like and actually trying things out, because you never really know at the end of the day. So that's kind of like my biggest piece of advice, is just seeing exactly what you like and just trying it out and figuring it out, because you really don't know until you try. And that's kind of what I found, because like I personally haven't really used my science degree in an aspect, like a work aspect, but I could see myself in the future, like potentially going into climate change. Something I'm really interested in right now is retail. And that's kind of why I wanted to work at Nudestix, because as I mentioned before, I'm really interested in marketing and retail. So in the future, I'd love to go into sustainability and retail, and just something like that, where it kind of bridges those two aspects, where I understand the implications of climate change, but then I also have like this business background to make an impact. You can always bridge them, and you can always see what you like.
Yeah, it's nice. I like the fact that you said like you can bridge them. Like you don't really have to choose between one or the other, because I think often people like feel pressured into like focusing on one or the other, but it's nice to see that you could like look at careers that merge, I guess, both of your interests. So I guess to wrap this episode up, with your experience with startups like Marlow and Nudestix, as well as big corporations like Hudson's Bay, how would you contrast these two very different work environments?
It's really interesting because, as I mentioned, like I worked at Hudson's Bay after my third year. And it was very interesting because, as we can all imagine, Hudson's Bay is a massive corporation. They have so many employees. It's very overwhelming. And I think the internship program, just based off like a large corporate structure, it was very like regimented on what my role was and exactly what I had to do. And I could tell like all my coworkers' roles were very set. With startups, like you have many hats. Let's say someone like steps out, you need to help them with something else. Like Marlow is a really like a much smaller company. So with that, like I had my hand in like so many different things. I helped with the social media, I helped build their ambassador program, and I helped a bit with like their marketing campaign. So the great thing about a startup, especially if you don't really know what you want, you can really try a bunch of things. There's so many needs that a startup has that you like are really thrown in a bunch of roles, which is something great. At the same time though, like on the other side of that coin, like Hudson's Bay, like I always knew what I was doing. Like it was very structured. Like I knew exactly what was happening, versus like startups, it can be a bit hectic at sometimes, but that can also be exciting. So it just kind of depends. Like I would say if people are looking to work, in a startup or working in a bigger corporation, just see like what they personally like. Nudestix is a bit bigger. So with that, it's a bit more structured what my role is, but it's still like I still do a lot. So like I'm on e-commerce and I help with digital marketing, versus in a bigger company, you would have one person that just does e-commerce, like one person that just does this. So I think it's really interesting to just try different things out, and it's really exciting, which is what I enjoy about startups. But again, it's like very dependent on the person.
Definitely. I guess like just to wrap everything up, we'd just like to thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us today. And like, hopefully you have inspired some of our network to try different things and really try to explore their interests, I guess, further. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think just like to reiterate, because I know people in school or people that are graduating soon, like are going to be stressed out. And when I graduated, it was the most stressed out I've ever been. And like every single summer, I was so stressed out to find an internship. Like I'm sure you can relate, your peers can relate, but like really to just, take it easy, look at what you like, just search for opportunities. Like there's so many opportunities out there. Reach out to people, like you just really have to look in and kind of find those connections, because if you don't, like if you never ask and if you don't try, then you won't know. So that's kind of where I want to end off on, because I wish I had listened to that advice.
I will definitely take that advice then. And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.